You are listening to the Certified Personal Trainer Podcast, a show by personal trainers for personal trainers. It's time to become a better trainer, get more clients, and change more lives. And now, here's your host, the head coach and founder of Fitness Mentors, Eddie Lester.
Hey guys, welcome to Fitness Mentors Certified Personal Trainer Podcast. My name is Eddie Lester, and we are back with another amazing episode of this podcast. So, some quick announcements before we get started. I wanted to remind you that our Discord is live and active. We've grown to over 200 members in just 2 short weeks of all, personal trainers, fitness enthusiasts, expert coaches, PhDs, masters in kinesiology, and also a ton of people in there that are 6-figure online coaches as well as in-person coaches too. A ton of great conversations going around tips about like marketing or getting new clients or how to get clients on Facebook or just exercises in general, helping each other with particular clients that have tough issues. So if you're looking to communicate with me, the team, and all of these experts, please join our Discord. I'm going to throw that in a link in the show notes. Pause this right now, scroll down, click that link, join, and then resume this podcast. I'll give you a second. All right. Glad you did that. Thank you so much. But let's get into today's topic. We are going to be going over the hierarchy of fitness exercises. So specifically, we're going to be getting into something that we talk a lot about in our Certified Personal Trainer program. That is, what exercises kind of are the base, and then how do you progress, regress, and basically utilize exercises based on the goals that you want to achieve. So as a disclaimer before we get into this doesn't mean that these particular exercises are the best for you or the best for all clients. It's just the baseline from which human movement prefers, we'll say. And we're going to get into this a lot more, especially as we start to think about a little bit about program design in this podcast, in the sense of, why is it so important to understand balance in exercises or have specific exercises that lead to equal parts work for opposing muscle groups. And we're really just learning about how you can utilize these exercises to build an effective program for all fitness goals. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start out by talking about the 6 primary fitness movements. So what are the 6 primary fitness movements? We obviously need to understand that human movement is going to prefer specific movements. And this is basically what our major muscle groups perform. So the primary fitness movements are targeting the largest muscles of the body, and there's 6 specific movements that work to exercise these muscles. So let's go ahead and start. So if you've been a certified personal trainer through Fitness Mentors, you're going to be familiar with this topic, but if not, you really have to think about the way that you create an exercise program and how it needs to have balance. So the first primary fitness movement that we're going to start with is going to be the upper body horizontal push. Okay, so that's upper body horizontal push. That is your push-up, your bench press, specifically targeting your pectoralis major, which basically horizontally adducts in a concentric way your shoulder joint. The pec does a lot of other things as well, but the primary movement that the pec does is that pushing in front of you. When we think about natural human movement and what we've done as far as evolution for millions of years, is that we've really focused on this forward pushing by utilizing our pectoralis major. That is the movement that you would push someone in front of you or push a rock or basically, anything that is doing that horizontal or forward pushing. Utilize the pectoralis major. That is an upper body horizontal push. The opposite of the upper body horizontal push is the upper body horizontal pull. That is where you're taking something from in front of you and pulling it back towards your chest. Okay, that movement is primarily targeting one of the largest back muscles which is the latissimus dorsi. It also assists, assisting muscles are kind of that upper back, the muscles that retract the shoulder blade, rear delts as well, kind of the back of your body. So the horizontal push gets the chest, the front of your body, at the shoulder joint area, and then the horizontal pull targets the posterior muscles of the body in which you would pull something towards yourself. Okay, so those two are opposite muscle groups. Oftentimes, other certifications kind of group back into one exercise category, which is a vertical pull and a horizontal pull. They kind of consider that one category. But we need to split those up because they are different movements and they target different muscles. So let's go with that next. So the next primary fitness movement after the horizontal push and horizontal pull is going to be the vertical push and the vertical pull. So the vertical push is going to be where you have, we'll say, something near your chest, and you're going to push that using your hands overhead, concentrically, basically accelerating abduction of the shoulder, in which you go all the way overhead. That is a vertical push or upper body vertical push. That primarily targets the deltoid muscles. Deltoids are going to be one of the bigger muscle groups around the shoulder joint, including like the chest and the latissimus dorsi. That's the third kind of largest muscle group there that's really going to focus on pushing overhead. All right, so then you have pushing overhead, but then you also have pulling from overhead back down to your chest. This would be something like a pull-up or a lat pull-down. And that particular movement is going to target the latissimus dorsi, the long head of the triceps, and even a little bit of the shoulder blade muscles as well that kind of focus on that scapular rotation too. So what does that mean? That means you have 4 primary fitness movements in the upper body that basically are shoulder joint movements: upper body horizontal push and pull, and vertical push and pull. What does that mean? So those are the primary fitness movements, and there's exercises associated with those that are going to, we'll say, exercise those particular muscle groups. We're going to get into the exercise hierarchy right after we go over the lower body movements. So the primary fitness movements, there's 6 of them. We have 2 for the lower body. We have the 4 for the upper body. So what are the 2 lower body primary fitness movements? You have the lower body push, or the, we'll say, knee extension quad focus of the lower body push, like a barbell squat, or basically a a squat rack, or a squat machine, leg press machine. That targets the quadriceps primarily. The extension of the knee is where that focus is. And the other lower body movement is going to be the lower body pull, or the glute and hamstring focus, and primarily targeting kind of the extension of the hip. The extension of the hip, in which the weight is typically more front-loaded, and you have to, we'll say, do something like a deadlift to pull something off the floor. Lower body pull is considered that because you're kind of extending with the hip extension in mind, kind of glutes, hamstring focus. The lower body push does also have a glute focus, but it really focuses on the extension of the knee, which is primarily targeting those quadriceps. So those are the 6 primary fitness movements. And now we'll touch on the accessory fitness movements. So just in case you guys have not, we'll say, got into our CPT program, we have primary fitness movements, the 6 primary fitness movements: vertical push pull upper body, horizontal push pull upper body, and then the lower body push and pull, knee dominant versus or knee and quad dominant versus hip and we'll say glute hamstring dominant. But then you also have accessory fitness movements. That is your, we'll say, elbow flexion, elbow extension, getting the biceps and triceps. And then you also have your calf extension and flexion. Also some of your core movements like lateral flexion, spinal forward flexion and extension, and then some rotation in the core as well. And then you also have some wrist movements if you wanted to add those to your accessory fitness movements as well. Why are these primary fitness movements most important? It's because it requires the largest muscles of the body working to efficiently perform these. The largest muscles of the body typically require the most energy to perform, and therefore should be prioritized typically in most programs as we'll say equal volumes throughout if you are seeing proper muscle balance, meaning you don't have any muscle imbalances or pain leading to or caused by muscle imbalances. All right, so now let's get into first off, when we think about the program design elements, yes, you want those to be equal in volumes typically in most programs. The 6 primary fitness movements. That's because you're targeting the major muscle groups with equal volume. Depending on however you set up these programs with whatever exercises, typically equal volume within those primary fitness movements is going to be recommended. But then we also have to think about what are the exercises that kind of build the foundation of these muscles. Well, you know the primary fitness movements that are associated with each of these muscle groups. So now let's talk about the hierarchy of exercises. Meaning, what is the simplest way, and we'll say, I don't want to say best way, but a very good way to work out the horizontal push-pull, vertical push-pull, and lower body. So a lot of this does come in relativity with stability. The more stability that an exercise requires, the less target of, we'll say, strength that the muscle receives. Now, what does that mean? It basically means that if you're doing a barbell bench press on a bench with no stability elements that are required, that is going to target the chest muscle we'll say the most, because there's no other thought or muscles that need to contract because you're on a stable surface focusing on that push. Obviously, you do have all the stabilizers within the joints that keep you stable and balanced, but if you were to try to do the exact same exercise on a stability ball in a glute bridge position, that lessens the amount which I highly don't recommend doing that, just because you don't want to pop the stability ball or put pressure that could potentially injure you there. But what I'm saying is that stability ball limits the amount of emphasis on one particular muscle group, the chest. So when we think about the hierarchy of exercises, it's what exercise puts the most emphasis on the primary movers of the body. So let's go over this. And this is kind of, we're going to start from the upper tier of focus with these prime movers, these primary fitness movements and the primary muscles that perform them. And then we're going to slowly work our way down. But as you guessed, it's going to, the less the stability, the less higher in the hierarchy. And that's because it focuses a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less on the target muscle group. But there's function and reason for that as you increase stability, which we'll talk about later. So when we think about the 6 primary fitness movements, the 6 primary exercises, or the highest on the hierarchy of these primary fitness movements, or exercises relating to working out these primary fitness movements, are going to include a barbell, or a stable barbell for some of them. So let's talk about this. For the upper body, you have the upper body horizontal push. Bench press. Barbell bench press is going to target that muscle group the most because there's such a focus on that. When we think about machines, we're going to kind of leave that out for most of this conversation because machines can also target that muscle group even more specifically. That doesn't require as much thought even in stability in some joints, but we're going to focus on this as a kind of more of a free weight conversation because you have cable pulling machines, you have we'll say some strength machines, you have all different types of machines that modify this, but we're really thinking about this in free weights. But can machines be as stable as a barbell bench press? Absolutely. So there is some, we'll say, equity there, or equality, I should say, in there. But let's think about this. So first one is the horizontal push, which is the bench press, targeting the pectoralis major muscle. And that is the primary fitness movement with the highest on the hierarchy exercise, barbell bench press. Next is the opposite of a barbell bench press, which is going to be pulling that bar towards your chest, or kind of towards that your torso. That is typically considered one of the best, highest on the hierarchy is going to be the bent over row. Okay, bent over row is going to emphasize the most work for that upper back muscle in the stablest position. Obviously, if you have a machine that allows you to lay face down and pull in that same way, without using as many lower body muscles. That can be effective for that upper body as well, but we really want to think about the free weights here. So barbell bent over row is going to be the horizontal pull highest on the hierarchy. And once again, this isn't better or worse than other exercises. It's just what targets that muscle group typically the most effectively for strength. Okay, there's many other goals that are associated with pulls, such as stability, such as balance, such as coordination. There's so many other, we'll say, goals there, but we're kind of focused on targeting the muscle the most for strength. And then beyond that, we have the vertical push, the overhead press using a barbell. So our barbell overhead press is going to be highest on the hierarchy of strength exercises, typically in the standing position. You're taking the barbell and you're pressing it overhead. What is that going to do? That is going to target the shoulder muscles or the deltoid muscles, primarily the middle and anterior deltoid. That is really going to, once again, develop that overhead pressing muscles, and the prime mover, once again, is the anterior and middle deltoid. Highest on the hierarchy is the overhead press with the barbell. Next, you have the vertical pull. So typically, we don't think about pulling a barbell down towards us. I guess we can if we have a machine, like a pulley machine or a lat pull-down machine to do that. So what do? We lock that barbell into place and we pull our body weight up until that bar touches the chest or comes close or to the chin up, pull up. That is going to be the highest on the hierarchy of strength exercises for the vertical pull. All right, so we have barbell bench press, barbell bent over row, overhead press with a barbell, and then the pull up. That's for the upper body. The four, we'll say, foundational exercises for the upper body, utilizing the primary fitness movements. Are there other muscles that get, we'll say, work done within that spectrum? Absolutely. Biceps and triceps are active. All the stabilizers of the shoulder, the shoulder blade muscles are primarily targeted, or the muscles that act on the shoulder blade are targeted as well. But the primary muscle movers are the pecs, the lats, and the deltoids. So they're all kind of targeting those in different primary fitness movements. All right, now let's move to the squat. So the squat is next, and that is the lower body push. Lower body push, knee focused, barbell squat. Barbell on the back, you pull it off the rack, and then you squat down low, and then you come all the way back up. That is primarily targeting the knee and quadriceps. The glutes are also very active in that as well, but it primarily targets the knee and quadriceps because of where the weight is located. And when I say the weight is located, it is back loaded, further back, therefore forcing you to lean a little bit more forward and therefore push through the knee and the toe more than the heel. And there's definitely plenty of we'll say movement and subjectivity in where you place the weight during the squat, on the ball of your foot, on the heel of your foot. Different things can be modified, but because that weight is on your back, it forces your center of gravity forward, and that primarily targets the quadricep muscle. All right. Then that is once again, the highest on the hierarchy of strength exercises for the lower body push, or the quadriceps and glutes are in there as well. Then we also have the last primary fitness movement, which is going to be the lower body pull, or the hip emphasis, hip extension emphasis exercise. So what is the, we'll say, best exercise for the hinge or the lower body pull? That is going to be the barbell deadlift. Okay, so once again, we have the barbell in action. We're pulling that barbell off the floor until we stand straight up with that barbell hanging by our waist. So why does that focus on the back of the body more? That's because the weight is positioned in front of us. Therefore, we have to extend from the ground upwards and then pull that weight kind of upwards and bring the hips forward into extension. So it emphasizes the knee less because the weight is displaced in an anterior forward position. So those are the top of the hierarchy. Okay. That means that when we think of strength, you can utilize those 6 exercises for a very complete program. Now, depending on the ability level of yourself and of your client or whoever you're programming for, you do need to keep in mind the limitations that might be present on muscle imbalances, on strength, on relative balance and coordination. Are they able to do these exercises? You have to decide that before giving them these types of exercises. But when we think of the hierarchy of exercises for strength, those are your 6. Now, what happens when you're on the top and then you want to go, we'll say, utilize more stability in your exercise programming because your client might be less advanced and not ready for that deadlift, barbell deadlift or barbell squat or barbell bench press? What do? Well, you start to add elements of stability that require more coordination and more core strength to execute those. So, when we think of the ability level of the client, we typically want to start them utilizing those 6 primary fitness movements, but you want to start them with things that enhance their coordination, their balance, their postural control, as well as their stability. So newer clients trend down on the exercise hierarchy, not meaning that these exercises are less effective, but they are building up towards those primary hierarchy fitness movements, or fitness exercises, I should say. So now, what are some examples of maybe, a step down in that hierarchy? So let's say you have an intermediate client that's, maybe you want to mix up that all the barbell work with some dumbbell work. So what do? You basically take those exact movements, keep all the same locations of these exercises, meaning if you're going to do a horizontal push, you'd still do it on a bench, but then you use dumbbells, 2 dumbbells. And those 2 dumbbells, those can move backwards, or they can fall backwards, they can fall forwards, they can fall out, and they can fall in. As opposed to the barbell can really only fall forwards and backwards, or superiorly and inferiorly when you're lying down. So that adds an additional element of stability that makes dumbbells more challenging on the nervous system to some degree, that focuses on balance and coordination and stability. So, is that still effective for strength? Absolutely. But it does challenge more stability in the shoulder joint. So less of an effect is directly on that prime mover as you have more other control that needs to be secured. So when you have, and the example of this is the power lifter that can, bench press 300 pounds, and they could bench press 300 pounds on the barbell with weight plates, and they do that, for a few reps, or they do that. That's their max, we'll say. Can that same power lifter pick up 2 150s and do the exact same thing? Typically not, because there's more stability and more challenge to the joint because of all the new, we'll say, areas in which can falter. The stability is increased, therefore the amount of weight that can be moved typically decreases. So that if someone's 1 rep max is 300 on the barbell bench press, their 1 rep max would not be 300 in combination with 2 dumbbells. It would definitely be lower. And that's something that's very, very common across all exercises. The more stability you add, typically the less weight you can perform, and therefore the less target on the muscle that you're focused on in that horizontal push or the pec muscle. So let's quickly run through the dumbbell movements. You have the horizontal dumbbell press, then the we'll say bench row. So you're on the bench at the gym with 1 knee on and 1 hand on, and you're rowing with 1 arm. Okay, or you can be laying face down on a bench and rowing with 2 arms with dumbbells. Very similar, because you don't have a barbell in the middle of that bench, you can pull all the way up with 2 dumbbells as well. The basically incline bench dumbbell row. That's 2 arms at the same time. You can alternate those. You can do 1 at a time. There's a lot of stability elements that come with that you can add because of the different fitness equipment being used, and therefore it's a different exercise. So this goes down the exercise hierarchy because of all these new modifications that can be seen with the dumbbell relative to the barbell. All right, then you have the overhead press, shoulder overhead press. You can do an Arnold press, which you come forward and then go all the way overhead. You can just go straight from 90 degrees up. You can go full range of motion. You can rotate while you do so. A lot of different things that can be added that require more stability in the shoulder joint. Therefore, move it down the exercise hierarchy. And then you have the, we'll say, pull down. So the pull down for dumbbells or two arms individually, you can do a double cable pull down that has its own each individual handle. That is a machine that allows for that. Typically when you think of that, you could do a single arm pull up, which is very difficult, but maybe add some reduction in load using a band or using a machine. But that is a possibility as well. And then you have the dumbbell squat, like a front squat or a squat holding two dumbbells on each side, depending on where you load. That's important for the way that it modifies the squat or the lower body push. And then the deadlift, maybe the dumbbell deadlift, or something that allows you to pick dumbbells up off the floor. You can do two hands, one hand, two dumbbells, one dumbbell, whatever it may be. So as you can see, we're moving down the exercise hierarchy with the equipment and exercise choices. Now, when we think of this, once again, this is for strength. When we focus on working that individual muscle as much as possible for strength, that's what we're referring to in the hierarchy. What are some better than others? It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that there's different ways that challenge the muscle, and those can be utilized in different types of programs when you're looking for different results. Okay. When we think about a baseball pitcher, they might want to increase stability more in their overhead press because of what they do. So they might have a dumbbell deadlift might be utilized for them because that requires more stability. And that's something important to take into account. What activities are you getting stronger for? If you're just getting stronger for strength itself, maybe you don't need all of this variation with stability tools, coordination tools, core activation on top of it, and all that sort of stuff. But if you do have an activity or a sport that you play, it is important to understand that you want to mimic the demands of that sport in the gym. And not for every single exercise program, because you want to we'll say periodize each program so that you don't overdo anything. But this is really what we start to think of when we think of program design is what exercises are going to lead to the best result for this individual with this goal. And that's really where we start to think about the exercise hierarchy as it relates to strength. If a young man or woman comes into the gym, wants to train with you for strength and to gain muscle, it's typical that a trainer is not going to jump straight to the top of the hierarchy and have them do that if they're not ready for it. What does that mean, not ready for it? In your assessment, do they have proper muscle balance? If so, they might be able to be more ready for the higher exercises higher up the hierarchy in strength. If they don't, that's where you might want to start them with a corrective exercise program to fix some of those imbalances that include exercises lower on the hierarchy. So what are some beginner exercises lower in the hierarchy? Well, maybe for a horizontal push, you might have something like an incline push-up or a push-up on the Smith machine in which the barbell is elevated. Or maybe a band-assisted push-up that kind of pulls you up because you aren't strong enough to push or do a push-up on your own. Or a knee push-up or a wall push-up. Those are some very far regressed horizontal pushes that will lead you up the hierarchy as you get to things like a regular push-up or a loaded push-up, or then a dumbbell bench press or a dumbbell floor press or things like that, or a renegade row, whatever it may be. So in that horizontal push, you start from easy and you move up the hierarchy as the client progresses. That is typical when the goal is strength, is to start them with the simplest version that they can perform of the primary fitness movement and then progress them upwards in strength and up the hierarchy as it relates to focusing on that muscle individually. All right, so what about for the vertical push? What are some beginner exercises that lead you up the hierarchy? Maybe for the vertical push, you can maybe do something like a single arm lighter dumbbell overhead press, maybe a banded overhead press, maybe a single arm kettlebell press or two arm, or an Arnold press with lighter weights, maybe lateral raises. Lateral raises get the deltoid as well. Maybe anterior raises. Okay, these are all things that are going to work their way up towards that barbell overhead press. Maybe even a behind the neck lighter barbell overhead press with very light weight, or even a PVC pipe to open up the chest, different things like that. Then you start to think of the, like a neutral grip overhead press with a single dumbbell. Lots of great things that you can do to progress slowly towards that, we'll say barbell overhead press. And then what about the horizontal pull, the row? So maybe a band row, maybe something like a suspension row, like on a TRX, you're in a glute bridge position and you do that row. An inverted row, meaning you're lying underneath the barbell on a Smith machine and pulling your body weight up. Maybe a 3-point dumbbell row. So on a bench, you're rowing from the side, one arm at a time, or maybe a wide a reverse fly, a rear delt fly, reverse fly, lying face down on a barbell, or using a machine, or using pulley system. Those are all going to be horizontal rows that lead you up the hierarchy in that sense. All right, what about the vertical pull? So the vertical pull is the pull-up is the primary fitness movement, or that's the highest on the hierarchy. But how do you get started towards working towards that? Maybe a pull-up with, or a suspension pull-up, meaning that you're utilizing a suspension device like a TRX to assist in that pull-up. Maybe a band-assisted pull-up. Then maybe a machine or cable pull-down with wide grip, cable pull-down with underhand grip, cable pull-down with two hands, or two individual pulleys. A straight arm lat pull-down where you're pulling the bar all the way from top down below. Then you have something like a neutral grip pull-up or a behind the neck pull-up. Those sort of things, if you have the proper shoulder flexibility, you can go behind the neck in the pull-up as well to really activate that upper back, basically in that downward rotation of the scapula. That really can work that upper back muscles, such as the trapezius muscle, rhomboids as well. And then that leads you up to the loaded, we'll say, barbell, the loaded pull-up. So once you're at that body weight pull-up, once again, you can add weight as well to do a loaded pull-up or a loaded chin-up with those different sort of grips. Then when we think about next, we have the lower body, and the lower body push is going to be the squat, barbell squat. Maybe squat to a box might be slightly easier. Barbell squat to a box. But then starting kind of from the beginning, what might be easier? Maybe just a body weight squat or a suspension squat, leaning back on a suspension machine like a TRX and then squatting like that. Maybe a single leg squat or a goblet squat, a front squat, or then maybe a dumbbell squat with two arms at the sides or something like that. So those are all progressing up in that sense. Any type of squat is going to help that, we'll say, highest on the hierarchy for strength, leading to that barbell squat. Next, you have the lower body pull, and what is good for that? So something maybe like a body weight Romanian deadlift. So when you're just hinging forward and then coming back up, throw your arms overhead to add a little bit more weight to that. That's one of my favorites for new people looking to focus on the hinge exercise is the arms overhead, and then you lean forward and then extend up with the legs staying stiff, or Romanian overhead reaching deadlift. Romanian deadlift with arms extended overhead. Then you have something like a single leg deadlift in the sense that you have the kettlebell or dumbbell in front of you, single leg reaching and extending up, focused on with the front weight, or the weight being in front there loads the back of the body. And then you have things like glute bridges are great, glute bridge extensions with added weight. Throw a dumbbell, kettlebell, or barbell, and then put your back on a bench and your feet on the ground and squeeze the glutes to come up in that glute bridge position. Maybe a trap bar deadlift. That's since the weight's not fully front loaded, it's kind of more neutral. That trap bar might focus a little bit more on the quads than the front weighted dumbbell, or it definitely does focus more on the quads than the regular barbell deadlift, because that's front weighted, and the trap bar is more neutral weighted. And then maybe even a dumbbell Romanian deadlift. Kettlebell swing is even, or kettlebell deadlift is going to be leading up to that, towards that barbell deadlift at the top of the hierarchy. All right, and then we do have something just to note, that the split squat position is also can be considered a primary fitness movement depending on the sport that you perform. I surf and do board sports, and that split squat position, or a lunge, is an important position for me as well. Most of the lunges and lunge variations do focus on the quad more, so I tend to lump those into the lower body push. That's very typical for us, and you'll see that in our curriculum, that the lunge positions are more in the lower body push, because they do, almost all of them typically emphasize the quadricep more than the glute and hamstring. So that's one important thing just to note, is that the lunge positions we group with the squat, or the barbell squat, or the lower body push. All right, guys, so hopefully that kind of clarified a little bit around exercises, how they relate to the hierarchy of exercises relating to the primary fitness movements. And when we think about everything beyond that, like accessory fitness movements, those are there to build upon your primary fitness movements. Oftentimes, one example I've had is a female that wanted to do pull-ups, actually had very strong lats, but their biceps were lacking and weren't allowing them to get a full pull-up with their body weight. So we worked on the accessory muscles to promote the, we'll say, goodness, I don't know why that word came to my mind, but to promote their ability to perform the, we'll say, pull-up, because the biceps are required in a large degree to assist with that pull-up as well. So utilize your accessory fitness movements to benefit your primary fitness movements, and or if that's your goal to increase the size of your arms, you can add accessory work before or after your primary fitness movements, depending on your goal and how you want to program the exercises in the actual fitness program for that client based on their goals. All right, so once again, hopefully that kind of clarified a little bit around the exercises as they relate to strength. Now, when we think about stability hierarchy of exercises, things with more stability are going to be higher up things that have less stabilization. Let me say this again. Things that are very stable would be lower on the stability hierarchy of exercises. If stability is the primary goal, you would want to create a more unstable environment and progress stability upwards. Okay. Coordination, if that's a primary goal, you'd want to choose the exercises that have the hardest coordination levels, and those would go up the hierarchy. Okay, balance, the exact same thing. The more balance, the more balance required, the higher on that hierarchy. Hopefully, though, you can understand that there's an inverse relationship between strength and then stability. The more stability required, the less strength that exercise will typically provide, the less strength gains that exercise will provide. And the exact opposite. The more strength an exercise emphasizes, the less stability is typically present, because you want the most stable exercise to promote strength. Hopefully that kind of gave you a good understanding of how you're programming exercises, what exercises might be good for what goals, and it's really your job to go in there and now, remember, you're always periodizing in 3 to 4 week programs for your clients. That meaning you're doing a completely new exercise routine every 3 to 4 weeks. You do not have them do exercises for too much longer than that, because they will plateau. And then if they plateau and they keep doing the same exercise, that will lead to overuse of particular muscle groups. That's why you have to mix up your training and create new programs every 3 to 4 weeks. That is called periodization. Make sure you're doing that. Utilize the tips in this particular podcast to apply to your clients' programs, and go out there, kick some butt, Once again, join the Discord if you have not, because there's a ton of great science information like this in there from expert trainers, as well as all you can consume on how to get clients, how to build a business, how to train clients for a specific need, for a specific goal, nutrition, supplements, everything you can possibly imagine. We're all in there discussing it actually right now. Go in there, tag me at Eddie Lester, and I'll respond and say hi to you. All right, guys, thanks so much for checking out the Certified Personal Trainer podcast, and I will see you next week. Have a good one.
As always, thanks for listening to the Certified Personal Trainer podcast. You can learn more about fitness mentors at fitnessmentors.com. Be sure to share this podcast on social media. And remember, we are here to help you succeed.